You're watching Force 13's live streaming service.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Force 13 AU Live. We are back again for another hour of coverage regarding 23U and Seroja here, heading towards the Australia coastline. So we're looking at two systems that are going to be of some concern over the next few days. And I do have my team with me tonight, comprised of Force 13 AU Director David Tones, Chief Cyclone Analyst Evan Williams, and our own from over in the U.S., Jonesy. So how are all of you doing tonight?
Not bad.
Having an alright evening.
All right, and with that being said, we're going to open things up with just an overview of what the Australian region's looking like. So first of all, this is Seroja, and this is 27S, and or 23U for those of you in Australia. And this is our overview of the basin. So of course we have Seroja, which we'll be talking about more later tonight. This is definitely a concerning situation for Western Australia, likely a powerful cyclone landfall, we think, at this point. So definitely a dangerous situation to unfold there. We have 23U, which is likely to basically interact with Seroja and get catapulted to the northeast before it does move into northwestern Australia, likely as a substantially weaker system. We have 24U, which is formed out here a little bit outside of the AU region's technical area of responsibility. We've still marked it on this tropical weather outlook, though. This is 24U, 55 kilometers per hour, 999 millibars. We do believe this is a tropical cyclone that is heading into generally there, the eastern Indian Ocean region. And then finally we have 92P, which has a 40% chance of formation, could form within the next few days and be a rather serious situation for those in New Caledonia. So that's what we're looking at right now across the Australian region. And I guess the first question would be, and this one goes to you, David, how's the Bureau of Meteorology changed in the last day with their messaging on this?
The Bureau of Meteorology has really ramped up their language, and somebody's got a bit of a sense of humour, but they are saying a dangerous situation is developing as Seroja approaches the coast, probably late Sunday, but the Bureau has updated, and I'll be looking forward to seeing what they say around 2:30 Western Australian time, but it is I'm just waiting for the Western Australian government or a government department to start issuing their normal or activate their normal procedure in getting people or sending people messages to prepare, and this is one system that really can't be ignored, even though it's generating a lot of uncertainty with the interaction of the system. And then we've got the 24U, and it's, as you said, Thomas, outside the area, but the Bureau still has it on their books, northwest of the Cocos-Keeling Islands. It's expected to move east with little development today before changing to a southeasterly track on Friday. But the priority one is Seroja, and it looks like it's going to be a Category 3, heading for Category 3, but that's still off the coast.
Yeah, and there we go, and that's really what we're looking at across the basin here with the basin overviews. Devin, you have something up on your screen here. This is shortwave infrared imagery, it looks like, of Seroja. What are we finding here? All right, well, it looks like we don't have Devin at the moment, but we can see the shortwave here clearly. Oh, we see the cursor moving.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I am here. My microphone apparently is not.
There you are.
Yep. So I am here. I basically wanted to pull up shortwave. I don't really need to pull up shortwave. I should really just pull up visible because it's actually day out here. So let's see if the visible loop, maybe the visible loop will actually update a little bit nicer. But what I want to show is just how much of a mess these two storms are. Because I've been watching both of these systems very closely, and it's been an utter nightmare to track. So I'll just go ahead and just look at a still frame here. First off, we have the exposed center of 27S right here. This is moving up and off to the north and east. So 27S is not looking like a good storm at all. This is not a good system. This is not a healthy system. For a tropical storm, what you would typically want for strengthening is that you need this underneath the convection. Whenever you see a center get detached from the convection, that storm's not strengthening. That storm's not doing well at all. It's being heavily sheared more than likely. It's just not a good symptom at all. Whenever you see a low-level center just get completely decoupled from the convection. And you can see that happening here with 27S because this center is moving this way. This convection is moving this way. They're moving away from each other. I don't know if you're really going to be able to see this. But, yeah, I guess you could see it somewhat as the images slowly load in, but you'll be able to see the swirl literally just detaching from the clouds as it continues. Now, I want to say this because our friend over here, Seroja, is actually not faring that much better. Typically, again, you want for a strengthening storm for the center to be directly over the convection. That's not what we are seeing with Seroja. Seroja is having a terrible time keeping its act together, and I'm going to have to pull up Real Earth for this because I don't want to get the coordinates wrong because it is semi beneath clouds, and it's really difficult to really get a fix on this storm. This storm's been a nightmare to actually find the center of. I'm just pulling up my notes here real quick. I mean, we're talking 16, 114, and that's based off of microwave data, and that was at 0. So we got to go back further. Sorry about this.
It's all good.
And whilst Devon is bringing it up, just reading the Joint Typhoon Warning Centre, and they're saying there's only, 500 nautical miles between the two.
Yeah, these two systems are very close to each other. There's no questioning that. I'm just seeing here. That's why, yeah, it's actually trekked further to the much further down to the south. So here's the thing: this entire blob that you're seeing here, this is in general. This is moving towards 27S. The center of this storm is not moving towards 27S. It is located all the way over here, and it's moving pretty much due south, if not a little bit west of south. Now, when we take a look at it at 0Z, it was located roughly around 16, 114, and that's pretty much confirmed by microwave imagery. Somewhere in the ballpark of 16, 114. It has moved to the south. It seems pretty considerably since then. But it is still the center of this storm, and the center of both of these storms for this matter, And just to remind you where these things are heading. The two centers here, for one, of course, these two are starting to rotate around each other. This is called the Fujiwara effect. This is not necessarily a surprising thing. More or less surprising thing is that Seroja's been shockingly, and I mean shockingly, disorganized for a very long time now. And we've been waiting for Seroja to really get its act together, and it just hasn't done that yet. And I'm really surprised by it, because you would really think that, Seroja would finally get its act together and would start strengthening. The center's been completely displaced from the convection the entire day. So it's been struggling, and I mean really struggling, to be able to get anything together. And now we have two systems with centers that are nowhere near the convection that they're supposed to be underneath. So basically what we're looking at is two very disorganized storms. Now, we still think that Seroja is going to win just based off of pure size. And once one of these two systems win, the conditions are absolutely favorable for further strengthening. Like, you can go ahead and take a look at the sea surface temperatures. They're 29 to 30 degrees Celsius, which you only need to be at 26 to support significant intensification of a tropical system. So 29 to 30 degrees Celsius is more than enough, ample fuel. There's little to any wind shear, so once these two storms knock each other out, the wind shear that's affecting them should go away, and we should have a dominant system that will actually be able to, take over. But now, more importantly, is that also there's just ample humidity. You're not going to get dry air over here either. So, although the two storms are looking very disheveled right now, once the interaction stops, it's expected to turn around in a very quick hurry. And whichever storm ends up winning this interaction, which again, we really think it's going to be Seroja because it is the larger one. Which one of these two, whichever one wins the interaction, we're expecting their residual system to quickly intensify from its current state.
Yeah, and I guess the main message there is just, despite the fact this hasn't, that Seroja in particular hasn't strengthened as much as anticipated, that doesn't mean you should let your guard down.
Yes.
We are about to release our latest forecast cone here on the AU Twitter, so you can actually go over there in just a moment. We're about to show it on the stream. But we're still forecasting a Cat 4 Australian system out of this, 165 kilometers per hour. So it's still expected to get quite strong. And we can actually get that cone up now. But yeah, there it is. What were you going to say, Devin?
I'll be honest with you right now. I think between these three systems, the one that's currently not designated as a tropical storm by anybody other than us is the one that looks the best.
That's fair, actually. That's fair.
I was just about to say, I was looking on the Bureau's website, and they do not have anything marked for, 91S, which is 24U. And they only have Seroja and Tropical Low 1, which is 23U.
Mm-hmm. I would like to go over the different forecasts from different agencies, from Force 13, the Joint Typhoon Warning Center, and the Bureau of Meteorology for Seroja. I do just want to start with the first one here, which is ours. We have this thing strengthening up to a Category 4 Australian, 165 kilometers per hour, and ultimately making landfall in about 4 days, with winds of 120 kilometers per hour as a Category 3 AU equivalent. This is still a very large spread for where this could make landfall, because unfortunately what you're getting is this, it's a pretty narrow actual uncertainty for a cone in track for the 4-day period. The problem is that because it's going to be riding along the coast, it could make landfall and impact really anywhere along the southwest Australian coastline. And that's what's making this so complicated. But again, a Category 4 equivalent peak, a Category 4 AU peak, Category 3 AU landfall, those are the current expectations.
Yeah, we haven't really backed off on the forecast intensity here because, again, despite the storm struggles, it's in almost perfect conditions. And basically all the global models say that this is going to intensify in a hurry.
Yeah.
And you can see here, just on visible imagery, you can already see we've got a pretty... Come on. We've got a... It's not letting me...
I've got imagery up on the stream here of Seroja.
There we go. You can pretty much see here, there's these bands. This is indicative of a jet. One of these two systems, wherever it is, they're going to trek into this, and then they're going to be pulled southeast along that jet. And that's pretty much the forecasting discussion right now, is that either this storm's going to loop around and then be pulled into the jet, or this storm is going to eventually win and then loop into the jet. Either which way, it's looking like either of these storms is going to run into this jet. It's not going to be both of them, because one of these two are going to die. We still aren't 100% sure which one it's going to be. But if it's, let's say, Seroja, it'll end up trekking, and then it's going to run into this jet that you can already see is set up here, and that's just going to bend it directly into Australia. So, unfortunately, it does look like that Western Australia impacts, if either of these storms end up ramping up like the models are saying, it looks like significant impacts in Australia are pretty unavoidable at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'd have to agree with you on that. So,
Everybody on the western coast of Australia should be taking this very lightly, because it can, as we were saying, it could really go anywhere on the western coast of Australia. It could even go into Perth, which is a very metro area, very heavily populated area down in Western Australia. So nobody should be taking this lightly, and they should definitely keep an eye on this system, actually both systems, to see which one wins out and which one will be affecting them.
absolutely. And for those that want to take a closer look, our cone on the Force 13 Australia Twitter has just been released. So again, you can take a closer look at that, look at more specifics, see the image for yourself. If you want to head over to the Force 13 AU Twitter, while we continue to talk about these storms. Now I've talked about that, I do want to look at the Joint Typhoon Warning Center's forecast, because I think it's important to look at what the professionals are saying as well. The Bureau of Meteorology, we're going to get to their forecast here in short order. But the Joint Typhoon Warning Center is forecasting, still, despite this struggling, they've actually gone up in their intensity forecast since last night. To 110 knots. It was 105 last night. So, rather, that actually kind of surprises me that they've gone up despite the lack of intensification. But they're anticipating a 185 kilometer per hour storm at peak, and then they're anticipating their an 85 knot landfall into Australia. That's 140 kilometers per hour, so they're expecting a stronger storm across the board here than we currently are. So it looks like the Joint Typhoon Warning Center thinks the storm's really going to get its act together over the next day or so. And I really think that the next day is going to really be important when it comes to what happens. I think by this time tomorrow night, we're going to have a much, much better idea of what's going on with the storm and what we can really expect from it.
believe they
So-
have it reaching 65 knots by 18Z on the 8th, it says, correct?
That'll be today.
That'd be later today.
Yeah, it'd be later today. They're expecting that.
65 knots by 18 hours?
Yeah, that's the expectation.
We'll
From
see.
the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. I'd be very impressed if that were to happen, but Joint
Yeah,
Typhoon
because
Warning Center driving it all the way up to 110 knots. So we'll see.
Because they have this, for when their count started, they have it at 45 knots, so this would be jumping 20 knots in a day's time. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, that we will, for sure, to say the very least. Now I do want to move on to the Bureau of Meteorology's forecast. This is a 3-day cone, but the Bureau of Meteorology forecasting a Category 3 Australian scale storm taking the turn towards Australia here. So they aren't within range of a landfall just yet, because again, it's a 3-day forecast, but a Category 3 Australian scale storm. And they're expecting it around this time around this time tomorrow, Cat 2 Australian. So it looks like we're seeing things. Get really
Yeah. So
really serious,
yeah,
to say the least.
Yeah, so the bottom line here is that we're expecting either Seroja or 27S to consolidate rather quickly and intensify in pretty short order. The storms, they're struggling right now. That could change very quickly. They're in very favorable peripheral conditions. Very favorable.
Absolutely.
That can be agreed. I'd say that we're in a situation where if we didn't have this interaction going on, we'd be in virtually perfect conditions.
The conditions are easily enough here. Like when we were talking about this initially, we were talking that the ceiling will probably be 150, like not 150, 140 miles an hour for this storm on the Saffir-Simpson hurricane wind scale. For 1 minute winds 140 miles an hour, we thought was going to be the absolute top for this thing. If this interaction wasn't here, I think that there would be really nothing stopping it from being a Cat 5. If I remember correctly, I think it was Cyclone Ernie that was a Cat 5 in a very similar region last year.
I can look that up.
Yeah, I don't really know. I'm not terribly familiar with the Southern Australian basin, unfortunately.
Yep. Severe Tropical Cyclone Ernie was one of the quickest strengthening tropical cyclones on record, and it was the first Cat 5 severe tropical cyclone in the AU region since Cyclone Marcia in 2015, and the strongest in the region since Cyclone Ita in 2014.
Yeah, so pretty simply put, we've seen a cyclone very recently blow up to be very strong in that exact region. And we're seeing very similar peripheral conditions to that storm with this. Now, this isn't going to be a Cat 5 because it's not going to have enough time to get there, we don't think. But it's obviously going to strengthen very quickly once it starts getting its act together.
That is for sure. Devin, something I'd like to note here, something that I'm observing is that we're seeing this huge blob of convection with Seroja. It looks like 23U or 27S's convection is really starting to wane here. I think this might be a sign that Seroja's really starting to win out the battle here. At least on the infrared that I'm seeing. Do you think that this could be a sign of the beginning of the end for 27S?
Well, the center completely decoupling from the storm is basically the beginning of the end for 27S here, maybe. We'll see. We'll have to see if new convection can refire over the now exposed center. The convection is waning right now on 27S, mainly because that convection's not being supported by the center anymore. If you go ahead and take a look to the north and west at 91S, you can see that convection's actually still firing up with that center. That's still looking pretty good. And meanwhile, you can see that Seroja's actually got a couple of really good hot towers that have absolutely nothing to do with the center of circulation. So that's why it's able to keep those going. But with 27S, with that center being completely gone, it's really not going to be able to keep that blob of convection going. It'll have to generate pretty much a new one. And that's going to be a pretty tall ask.
Yeah, it definitely will be, especially because we have another tropical cyclone right next to
Right
it.
there. Yeah, there's another one right there. It's literally right there.
Yeah, and I mean, Seroja, again, isn't faring much better. Its center is decoupled from the big burst of convection. I mean, it technically has a little bit of storm activity over it, doesn't it?
Like I said, it's got a couple of hot towers going for it, and it's been able to maintain those hot towers because there's at least a mid-level circulation there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure about a low-level circulation, but there's definitely at least some sort of a mid-level circulation there that's been able to keep that storm going. That's not the case. That's not there for 27S. So that blob is pretty much going to be on its way out as long as that center continues to move away from it.
Yeah.
And with the convection, I see what you're talking about on the stream, Thomas, with the dying out on 27S. This is where I turn around and ask the question. The Bureau currently has 27S being a Cat 1 on the AU scale.
Mm-hmm.
By this time tomorrow. The question is, will it even reach that or not?
It could.
It could. We'll have to wait and see.
It should be able to do it too, because even if it doesn't refire, that low-level circulation's still going to be there, and it should still be able to produce strong enough winds to keep it a tropical storm, at least for now.
Yeah, and again, it hasn't. The Bureau is anticipating it to actually get better organized from a tropical low to a Cat 1. I think that's a pretty tall ask at this point.
If you ask me, it's already been a Cat 1 earlier today, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and again, we'll see. Regardless, I don't anticipate 27S really being around for too much longer. I must ask, though, when it comes to Seroja, I personally think that because we have that mid-level center that's obviously keeping convection going, and the low-level center has become completely displaced.
Can we see a center relocation?
Mm-hmm.
That's a hot question. Yes, we can. We have zero evidence to show that that's currently happening.
Yeah. So
that's the frustrating thing. Like, you could go ahead and take a look at microwave imagery. Microwave imagery will just show it as a blob. You can go ahead and take a look at ASCAT. ASCAT hasn't passed over this storm for the previous 13 scans. We have no idea what's going on underneath that convection. ASCAT's missed Seroja every time.
Yeah, and unfortunately that means that we really have no idea whether or not we're gonna really see this really begin to strengthen, and we don't even know if it's strengthening right now, if that relocation's been completed and it's already getting its act together, because it could be.
We're just holding the storm right now at 45 knots because, I mean, look at the convection. It's pretty good. The convection's really good. So you gotta figure it's gotta be producing at least as good of winds that 27S is producing. 27S was confirmed by scatterometer data to be producing 45 knot winds. So there you go on that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable to say the least. And, I mean, given what's going on with 27S right now and its complete decoupling of things, I feel like
Yeah.
Seroja would almost have to be more organized than we're thinking it could be right now in order to be able to really get, with how good conditions are, 27S to be looking the way it is right now. So, I don't know. It's a complicated situation.
Yeah.
Regardless...
Common sense tells you that the center is underneath the convection in Seroja, and it's going to start rapidly intensifying. Everything you look at says something different. Says something completely different. ASCAT, like you said, you get no information from that. Microwave puts the center way off to the east. Visible imagery puts the center way off to the east, and we can't tell if there's any low-level center developing in the middle of the storm or not. So we're kind of flying without a plane going in there and investigating this storm. We're really flying blind.
Yeah, that we are, and unfortunately, I think we're going to be continuing to fly blind for at least a little bit until we really start to see a well-organized CDO form on this thing, which I guess we could be seeing the beginnings of here if that center relocation is completing right now.
It's trying. It's definitely trying. You could look at it. You could take a look at it. You could see that it's trying to at least form some sort of a semicircle there on the top half of the convection that it's currently got. So it's trying to produce something. But the thing is that that's just not where the center is. And the center's not even moving in that direction. You take a look at the clouds, and the clouds are moving basically west-southwest. The center's basically moving due south, maybe a little bit west of due south, but it's basically moving due south. That's the crazy part.
And that makes things very complicated in terms of what to expect. But what I will say is that the more I think about it, the more I speculate that we are going to probably see a relocation occur, because I don't see the center that's moving south refiring convection and beginning to move to the southwest again. So, and I don't anticipate the death of this tropical cyclone, given how healthy the convection's looking right now. So
yeah, no, I'm not expecting it to die either. Right now, I think probably the best idea is, like, you pretty much have to almost look at it as a tropical wave about to form. Honestly, when you take a look at microwave data, when you take a look at visible imagery, the center that's moving to the south looks awfully broad. I mean, you can't even really tell if that center is really even truly existing anymore, which is really why we need that ASCAT data, which we have not been getting, because it's just miss. So frustrating.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
It's hit 27S every time. It's hit 91S every time. Will not hit Seroja.
I know you were talking about plane going in there. Does AU region have recon or no?
No. Only the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific basins have recon.
Yeah, only the National Hurricane Center does it. I mean, JMA will do it for select missions, but I don't even know if they make that data publicly available.
Yeah, so unfortunately, we really are blind with these things unless we get things like ASCAT passing over them. And unfortunately, we just haven't had that happen. So we're, as Devin said, basically flying blind when it comes to the estimation of Seroja here. But
we don't have any way of peering into beneath those really tall cloud tops. We can't really look into it. It's way too far off the coast for radar. I mean, it's like 800 kilometers away from Australia still?
Yeah, it's still quite far.
I mean, it's a tall ask to peer into a storm at 100 kilometers away, much less 800. That's way out of range of any radar.
Yep, and we just got a new ASCAT pass from today that's literally from about an hour or two ago, and it has missed again. So,
No!
Is that number 14?
So,
Oh my god, are you kidding me?
We are watching. It almost looks like there's a gap in the data. Like it's not that it even completely missed, it's that there's a gap in the data near Seroja. So that's
I am looking at this too, and literally the person that posted this said missed.
yes.
That's exactly how I feel right now, because I mean I will give it credit, that's probably the closest that I've seen it.
Yeah,
And we can get some idea of what's going on there, but yeah.
So what I'm finding here is that the center, it does look like there probably is a center within those within the convection.
It's very elongated though.
Yeah,
Very
well,
elongated. And it's obviously still trying to form.
Yes, I think you're looking at the area where there's no speed in the barbs, right? Where it doesn't give a direction.
That's what you're looking at.
And you can see the differences in direction there. I'm actually thinking it could be south of there. You see how the winds veer at the very southern edge of the data we have? I almost think that the center could be south.
Well,
down
the actual center of circulation is to the south of there. You have to consider that there's also the low-level center of circulation that's off to the south and east of that scan.
Mm-hmm.
So those wind barbs are pointing towards that center. Meanwhile, there's this little trough that's located currently within the convection.
Mm-hmm. And so I think that we can pretty safely say that a new center of circulation is in the process of forming.
Yes, so I would like to see other scans.
Yes, that'd be nice.
Because that really rustles my jimmies. Like, that is really mean. Like,
I agree.
That is just that's
Seroja is like,
gotta be the worst. That's gotta be the worst I've ever seen an ASCAT pass do. Oh my god.
Seroja's like, no, ASCAT, I will not let you, go over me.
Well, we'll see. I must note, though, that in interesting fashion, with the new data that we're seeing come in, it looks like models have not really been fazed by this at all. No. Like all data indicates, despite this, that the peak intensity will be very similar to what was originally expected, which is it's kind of bizarre because we're expecting a much shorter period of time now than I think we initially anticipated for this to intensify. So
just bear with me one moment here. I'm still looking at data.
All right.
What is the ASCAT run supposed to be?
What, I'm sorry?
When is the next run supposed to be for the ASCAT?
No idea.
I mean, they're passing. If ASCAT A just passed over, usually ASCAT B is about an hour behind, and ASCAT C is about an hour behind that.
So we'll get some more data soon. And hopefully it won't miss. We'll just have to see. But again, I do want to make something very clear, that we're looking at a storm that is likely to still intensify to become a substantial system. Regardless of what happens now, there's pretty good agreement across models that the conditions will be so good over the next couple of days that even with these hindrances, it's not going to matter much. the storm is going to manage to intensify very quickly, and we're seeing a forecast that says by this time tomorrow night we're looking at a Category 2 Australian scale system. And we'll just have to see what exactly takes place there. But this has been absolutely it's been a bizarre storm to track, to say the very least. And Devin, it seems like you found some better data there.
I think I'm still looking, and I'm still trying to make sure. I mean, when I go ahead and look at this data, I mean, it's not very. I will say it's not very impressive. We got maybe 35 knot wind, so I think this is actually barely a tropical storm as is. But the thing is that so ASCAT A has absolutely penetrated the center of this storm. So we finally got what we needed on a descending path. ASCAT A has definitely gotten through the center of the convection, and it does actually look like that a center relocation is in order here, which is basically what we need to see. Now it's a mess in there. I'm gonna tell you straight up, it's a mess, and it's going to be located. I would probably say roughly 16 south, 112 and a half east. So if you could go ahead and see where that is in relative to where the convection is, which would be, I would want to look at 0Z here. What do we say here? 16, maybe a little bit south, maybe 16.2, 112.5. Would put it pretty much right. Would put it pretty much right here, which is still to the east of where most of the convection is on our little satellite imagery here. Let me see when this pass specifically was. It was actually at 0054. So let me go a little bit further. And now let's see here again. 16, 112.5. Yeah, no, that's actually still displaced pretty far to the, not pretty far, but still displaced further to the east. But it is actually underneath the convection now. So you can see where this semicircle is starting to take place. It seems like that's where a new center is trying to form. That's not where the deepest convection is, where the deepest convection, the hot towers are to the south. That's not where the center is trying to form on this thing. It's actually in where the semicircle is, a little bit to the east of the main burst of convection. It's sort of in that little bubble there.
Yeah, and we can see that on infrared a bit, kind of that notch where you'd think the center would be within that semicircle. But I think, Devin, that given the large convective burst here and the fact that we're seeing the center relocation with the decoupling of the center on 27S, I think that this probably marks the beginning of the end for 27S, and I also think it might mark the beginnings of Seroja getting its act together. I think once this relocation completes, we could start to see things wrap around more, and we could start to see things ramp up in a hurry here. Would you agree with that assessment?
I would agree with that assessment, yes.
And then, again, that would justify our forecast here, which, again, Category 4 Australian peak, and again, we're anticipating this, despite how much it struggled, to make a Category 3 Australian landfall. 120 miles per... 120 kilometers per hour, that's my bad, is the current expectation. And that would convert to 75 miles per hour. So, my bad, 85 miles per hour, 75 knots. I'm getting my conversions wrong tonight. But 120 kilometers per hour. That's the current landfall intensity expectation. And I do want to note that we shouldn't get too honed in on the specifics. This is still about 4 days out. There's a lot that could change here. There's a lot that will change here as we learn more about the system. The ceiling for this, despite the struggles now, is high. It is higher than what we're currently forecasting. It also could be a little lower in intensity. Regardless of that, this is still going to be a very rare tropical cyclone landfall occurring in Western Australia that's going to be producing strong winds, flooding rains, and some pretty gnarly storm surge, it looks like, just because the system's going to be making that extra tropical transition. So it's going to be huge. It's going to be massive, to say the very least. And with that, Devin, I know you were talking about it a little bit last night. Could we say with some confidence that due to how large the storm's going to be, the storm surge is going to be significant regardless of small fluctuations in intensity? Or do we think
Yeah. Well, yeah, with the storm, this storm's looking to be pretty big. We'll have to see how big it is once it actually gets organized here. That's going to be more important. But yeah, any sort of significant cyclone producing these kinds of winds, they're definitely going to be. They could definitely produce some pretty gnarly storm surge. This storm will absolutely be no different.
And again, that expectation, strong winds, flooding rains, and significant storm surge, that's what you have to know. So anywhere from Exmouth really down to Perth, those areas could get impacted, and I'd say that, areas farther south like Perth and just areas farther south in general need to be watching this very closely as we do move into the day 4 time frame, which would be around the Sunday to Monday time frame. So if we take a look at that day 4 point, that is exactly 4 days from now. So that's Monday morning. It's around this time on Monday that we'd be expecting a landfall with this system. So we're gonna continue to cover things with time here, but Category 3 Australian scale landfall is a possibility here for the Australian coast. And I would like to note that we are actually on the lower end of the forecasts right now. The Joint Typhoon Warning Center actually shows a landfall at 85 knots, and that would be, let me just make sure that I have my conversions right. Give me a second here, but 85 knots would be 140 kilometers per hour, so that's a significant uptick there. So we have it at 120, JTWC up to 140 10-minute. Still Category 3 Australian, but two agencies forecasting a Cat 3 Australian landfall. Bureau of Meteorology also forecasting a Cat 3 peak within their 3-day cone. So there's pretty high confidence this is going to strengthen very quickly, with all agencies showing a Category 2 plus system in the next 24 hours, which really indicates that Seroja is not going to let this hamper it. It's really going to start getting going here in short order, and I can't stress that enough. Despite how much this has struggled, it's going to get its act together. It's going to bring significant impacts to the Australian coastline, and we need to continue to hammer that home because that's really important. You should still be making preparations. You should still be preparing for this storm. It should not matter that it hasn't been strengthening as much as was expected by this point, because it's still going to be a significant storm by the time it gets to Western Australia, and we can say that's nearly a certainty.
Absolutely.
And let's see here. With that being said, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything of that nature, please feel free to ask us, and we'll be more than glad to answer them as we do continue to watch Seroja, 23U, and 24U. All of them within the Australian region here. And this is a very active period, especially for the late season in the Australian region. And we can't forget about what's going on in the Coral Sea as well. 92P could form here. 40% chance of formation has been given by us right now. I think there is some reason to believe that this could get upgraded with time here, as there is some pretty strong model support for this thing developing before it does get to New Caledonia. We'll just have to see, but definitely something to watch in New Caledonia. So in summary, Seroja, you need to be watching if you're on the western coast of Australia, 23U to bring heavy rain to the northwestern coast of Australia, 24U to move into the region, not really impact land, and 92P, again, if you're in New Caledonia, you need to be watching that closely. Alright, we do have a question by Cool Creeper Ryan. Given how close the centers are, could they merge within 24 hours?
I don't know about within 24 hours because of Fujiwara effect. They're not moving directly at each other.
No, and I don't anticipate a merge exactly. I more anticipate that we'll see the complete dissolution, or that basically one of the centers will dissolve and fade out of existence while the other one really ramps up and gets going, is what I'm anticipating out of this. So, we'll see. I wouldn't call it a merger exactly, but I'd say we're probably within the next day and a half to 2 days going to see one of these systems gone and the other one dominating, and right now we're pretty confident Seroja is going to be the dominant system moving down to the eastern coast of Australia, or the western coast of Australia. So that's what we're looking at this point. Someone's saying Seroja looks stretched out. Yeah.
That's what Windshear will do.
Yes, I would definitely agree with that. That Seroja looks stretched to some degree. But again, I do anticipate, despite how it's looking now, for this thing to really begin to get its act together soon. We have some new frames coming in, and the convection has actually really started to fire up again on the southern side of things. So I don't see this convection going away anytime soon, and I could really start to see us have a much better looking, much healthier looking system by this time tomorrow. We'll just have to see. Alright, well, we're about 8 minutes until the end of the stream. And I guess the next thing is, David, do you have any updates from the Bureau of Meteorology? Anything of that nature? I don't think he's currently here right now, but
I believe he said that he has visitors over right now.
alright, well then, we'll steer clear of that. Someone asking, why is there an AOI marked northwest of Hawaii on Force 13's day 7 through 14 outlook? I'll deviate off topic for just a moment here. There's, I made the forecast for this tonight for the day 7 through 14 for across the world. And what was seen was that we're going to have a few, and again, it's a low chance area, so the odds are that this won't develop, but there was enough of a sign that some sort of subtropical system near Hawaii could develop that I felt that a low chance was warranted, but very unlikely that develops. But there was enough of a sign again that I did feel the need to add it. Someone else asking, could 91S become a tropical cyclone anytime soon? We have called it one.
We are designating 91S as a tropical cyclone, and considering that it's actually had a closed center as early as 6Z yesterday, we are currently investigating to see just how long it's been a tropical cyclone for, but we have said that this is a tropical storm for the 0Z advisory. A scatterometer pass showed the circulation's absolutely closed. There's visible imagery to suggest the circulation is closed, and we have just enough evidence to be able to say that there's a very large swath of 30-knot winds. Due to oversampling, it's likely that there are some 35-knot winds that were missed, and thus we're going with 35 knots bare minimum for tropical storm. But yes, 91S, we're absolutely designating that as a tropical storm because I don't think there's really any other way to designate it. I still think it's the best looking out of these three systems.
Yeah, for sure. Cool Creeper Ryan clarifying, do we think the Joint Typhoon Warning Center will do it?
Right now, they have the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. If we go to their website, they currently have this marked as a low chance of formation over the next 24 hours. So they don't think this is a tropical cyclone. And as I saw on the Bureau's website, this is not even marked as a tropical low. So the Bureau doesn't even have it marked. For it to get a name, it would have to go up to Cat 1 on the AU scale. Otherwise, it would stay as 28S, which I know we had a landfall of a system earlier in the season on the Western Australian coastline, the northern one, that did not get a name. A lot of people were saying, why didn't it get a name? That's up to the Bureau to decide that. But for 91S to get a name, first of all, it needs to show up as a tropical low on the Bureau's website, which they do not have right now.
They have
And
declared
then
it a tropical low. They have it as 24U.
Okay. It's
So,
just not on their map in the zone yet.
No.
For it to get a name, it would have to go up to Cat 1 AU
Right.
scale, which they don't even have a cone out on that yet. So we're not sure when it would get, if it would get a name, and if it does, when it would get it.
Yeah, so we'll see. That's kind of up in the air at this point. We'll just have to see what exactly takes place there. With that being said, we're down to the final 3 minutes, and so we're going to go over final thoughts. I'm just going to go over mine real quick and then hand it off to both Devin and Jonesy for their final thoughts. But my biggest things are, especially in regards to Seroja, despite the struggle for an intensification phase to take place, Seroja is expected still to strengthen substantially over the next few days into a robust Category 3 to 4 Australian scale system, and will likely make landfall as a Category 3 Australian scale or higher system in about 4 days' time. So about this time on Monday, the expectation can be that we're going to be having a pretty significant cyclone knocking on the doorstep of Western Australia, which will be bringing strong winds, storm surge, heavy rain, all of those hazards. So preparations need to begin now for this storm. And again, despite the fact that it hasn't strengthened as much as we thought it would by this point, that does not mean you should let your guard down. This needs to be treated very, very seriously, as again, this is a very rare event for Western Australia, and we know it's only a matter of time before the interaction between 23U and Seroja ends, and Seroja will really begin to get organized and get going in this environment. All right, so Devin, what are your final thoughts?
Well, it's pretty obvious now that a center relocation has happened over the convection, and we can expect this storm to maybe start actually getting its act together. So stay very aware for this, for interest in northwestern Australia. Keep a very close eye on this storm. It's expected to strengthen pretty quickly once it dispatches 27S.
All right, and Jonesy, what are your final thoughts?
Well, for Seroja and 27S, we're gonna see which one wins out. We're thinking, just like everyone else is, it's gonna be Seroja. So if you're there on the western and southwest part of Western Australia, definitely start doing those preparations now if you haven't been, and definitely keep an eye on this, because one of you said, this is a very rare landfall, and it will bring a lot of rain, surge, and flooding as well. And don't take this lightly, because, like we said, the ceiling is high for this. It's a rare landfall, and at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that everyone stays safe and is out of harm's way.
All right, and with that being said, we're going to go off the air here. Thank you all so much for watching this live stream. We do hope that it was useful and we were able to get you the information that you were looking for. Please do let us know in the. You can tweet at us on Twitter, the Force1380 Twitter. Let us know how you thought the stream went. You can also check out our Twitter over there to get the latest updates and outlooks from us. And we'll have another stream like this tomorrow, going over more of what Seroja is looking like. And I anticipate we're going to be seeing a much better looking Seroja at this time tomorrow. All right. Well, thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you then.